Perennial Patch, a separate part of my garden to my Chicken City compound. And I must admit, this garden gets a lot less attention than Chicken City does, but it still manages to produce a beautiful amount of food and flowers, which I absolutely love. And Tony is up here at the moment. Hi, Tony the pony. He's doing some grass mowing for us, which is another convenient way that I can enrich the animals, but also get my gardening tasks done, because he loves the grass in here. So he probably spends 1 or 2 days a month in here doing some lawn mowing. He's happy, and then once he's had his feed and done his job, he goes back down to his home with the goats. So perennial edibles, there aren't that many of them, but I think they're so valuable because they're such a set and forget plant. With all the fun veggies we know, our tomatoes, our pumpkins, our cucumbers, these need to be planted and tended for every single season, and that gets pretty old. So having some perennial edible plants in your garden is, I think, really, really beneficial, especially if time is of the essence. So I'm going to go around and show you some of the, not all, but some of the perennial edibles I've got in this patch. Now it's late autumn, so things are just holding on. You can see my nashi pear behind you is losing all its leaves at the moment. So this garden's not going to look as good in probably a couple of weeks, but everything's still green and lush enough that I can show you these perennial plants. First up here, we've got asparagus, and this is probably the most well-known of the perennials. This one, you got to be in it for the long haul, because you set him up and you're not going to be harvesting any asparagus for a couple of years at least. So not one I would set up if you wanted a quick win, because he ain't a quick win. But once he starts establishing, you can see all these beautiful asparagus spears. Now these came up as little spears, and because I didn't harvest them, they've now grown into this frondy forest. But this is actually really good to help the plant establish itself. So the more you don't harvest it at the start, the more energy it can send into the roots, into the crown, and then you get more asparagus the next year. So you can see there's that would have been a fat asparagus if I had have harvested it. So you can see some on the compost. We've got a crown here, we've got a crown here, and we have a crown at the back. Now I used to have these planted directly in the ground elsewhere in the perennial patch, and I just think asparagus much prefers a raised garden bed. I mean, unless you've got amazing in-ground soil. So I dug them up and transplanted them, which asparagus really doesn't like. So it definitely set it back a few years, but he is much happier now in this raised garden bed. So for all intents and purposes, once it's planted, as long as you keep it weeded, you keep it fertilized, and you water it, it is set and forget. I mean, that's not largely set and forget, but the thing is, there's no planting again, there's just maintenance. And this guy will take over this entire garden bed to be like a carpet of asparagus over time. So if you've got the time and you're in it for the long haul, I would definitely recommend growing asparagus. Now next door, we've got a nice dahlia here, that's technically next door, but next to that is my walking onions, and I love this perennial crop. So this is basically the only spring onion thing I grow at all, because these are just so easy, and this I literally put no effort into. I don't even weed this bed, as you can see. There's something big growing in there that shouldn't be. Oh well, it's gonna get weeded now on camera. Yeah, okay. So this is the walking onions, and what happens is you plant one, one spring onion looking thing, and then it's not doing it now because it's not spring, but basically on the end you get this big seed pod that grows, and then like it's actually very beautiful. It looks like a big pincushion, and then as it grows bigger and bigger and heavier, it then drops, and then where it drops, all those seeds disperse, and then you end up with all these little onions everywhere. And this is not, I literally just planted one a couple of years ago, and now you can see like this whole bed is filled with these spring onions, and then you get little ones, you get big ones, and they can actually get very big, like almost not full onions, but kind of. I don't know if I'm going to be able to harvest one without breaking it off, but let's see. Oh, see, this guy is quite big. Okay. There we go. So he's kind of in shallot stage at this point. So you can see like it's kind of a big bulb there, and then if I peel this back, yeah, see there's like lots of little spring onions like growing off it. So yeah, this really is a very, very, very low investment crop. And you know, spring onions are something that you use a lot, so having a whole patch like this is actually really handy. I would do it in a raised garden bed or some kind of contained way, because as you can see, these actually would take over the whole garden if I let them, given I have done no encouragement, and this whole bed is like literally chockers with onions. So see, like look down there, like there's just so many little spring onions. So yeah, like I say, I don't actually grow any other type of onions anymore, because why would you when you got this? One over from our spring onions is our yacon, which you may or may not have heard of. It is a root crop, so these are the leafy tops, but these are about to die down. And then in this garden bed here will be all these big roots that kind of look like a parsnip but taste like a cucumber. I call it like a winter cucumber, an underground cucumber. And you just dig them up. Like we can't do it now, but basically at the base of all these stems will be the roots. So you dig up the winter cucumbers, great like winter veg, because there is not a lot of them around. These all die back, you cut them off, and then the next year they just sprout up again. So I have this one garden bed that's devoted to them. I put in no effort. I harvest them once per year, and then I just let it regenerate again. So that's like super low investment. And like I said, I love cucumbers, and there's not anything remotely like it in the winter veg department except the yacon. So would recommend adding that one to your offering. And then if we keep going through this absolute wilderness of, these are all different herbs, different mints, different sages. I love them. I probably do not need this many of them, but here we are. They're beautiful, like seeped in hot water, has like a different flavored tea. Anyway, as you can imagine, I didn't necessarily intend that it would take over like this, and it probably needs a hedge, but if it's edible, I'm not going to complain. Now this here, oh, we can actually see the chickies. Hi girls. We'll show everyone your little setup later. Are you having fun in there? So I do have chickens in this top patch, not all the time, but some of the time when I have chickens that I need to isolate from the main flock, or whether I have like gardening jobs that they can do for me. So at the moment I've got 3 of them up here, and they are very, very happy, and they're very cute. Anyway, in front of them here, which is looking very awful, we've just caught it at the end of autumn, is the Jerusalem artichokes. Now this would probably be the #1 perennial crop to grow if you want 0 effort and lots of food. These are, in my opinion, these are gonna save the world, because they are super nutritious and they grow in like nothing. Like they're actually so incredibly hardy how they grow. Like, I don't water them pretty much. I mean, occasionally when I like am down here, but for the most part they don't get watered. They don't need a lot of nutrients in the soil, and they grow this plethora of beautiful tubers, quite like a potato. Delicious roasted, just like a potato, delicious in soups, that kind of thing. So great winter veg as well. So you grow these long, they look like sunflowers during the warmer months, and then they die back, as we can see. And then we cut all these down, which is a bit of a job. And then we dig up the soil and we harvest the artichokes. Now these will then pop back year after year after year. They're not really perennial. What ends up happening is you never get every artichoke out of the garden, and then the next year those are your sprouts. But you can kind of, you got to know that about it and use it to your advantage. So I have these in a raised garden bed. I would never ever plant them in just the ground where they could kind of keep moving. I also would not plant them near my veggie beds that I grow my annual veggies in, because they're actually quite a weed. Like, once you plant them somewhere, they are never ever leaving that spot. So I've used that to my advantage by planting them at the end of my perennial patch here, but planted in the wrong spot, they will cause you hell. Now, I don't know if I'm easily 10 kilos just out of this garden bed. So as far as bang for buck goes, yes, I'm going to come give you some attention soon. As far as bang for buck goes, you are not going to be able to grow more food more easily in a small spot than your Jerusalem artichoke. So what I've got here is my chicken setup when they're up here in the perennial patch. So I've got my tractor on the outside, and that's 6 square meters. Then I've got my chicken house in there that is Fort Knox, where they get locked in at night, just in case anything was to ever dig under. Oh, hello Tony. You're on a mission to say hi. Hi. Do you look after the chickens? Do you look after the chickens? Make sure nothing gets in here? So something could dig under the tractor here, which is why I've got the steel house in the middle. But that system actually works really well. You just got to let them out in the morning and lock them up at night. And then during the middle of the day, when there's hopefully less foxes around, I open up the door and then fence off an area that I want them to prioritize. So in this case, along here, I've got my kiwi, I've got a pear, I've got some dahlias, I've got a lemon. So they do a really good job. I mean, they have made an absolute mess of my mulch that was all beautifully around, but then again, they're having a lot of fun with it, I'll say that, and they're also doing a great job of getting the weeds up. So once there's kind of no greenery here left at all, I move them and the tractor and the little house inside and the fencing to the next part of the garden I want them to work on. And then once they're done with that, I mean, they're kind of never done with that. You can keep circling them around and there's always garden to do, but they can also go down to Chicken City is the other option. And then just beyond their tractor are some of my beehives. So that's close pollination for all the apple trees I've got in my perennial patch and a lot of other edibles, and then it's good feed for the bees. I've got heaps of rosemary, I've got heaps of lamb's ears, so food for them as well. So it's quite convenient having them close for them and also for me. I didn't bring up any treats for you guys, I'm sorry. That was a bit rude, wasn't it? Oh, I'll see if I can find something. So, continuing up the perennial patch, we've got heaps of fruit trees. Like you can see, we've got a pear here, we've got a feijoa, we've got a sage bush that was not pruned properly and now it's a mess. We've got comfrey, we've got some citrus, and then we've got the last perennial edible that everyone should grow, and that is the rhubarb. This I find super easy to grow. I give it very little attention, and it just keeps delivering and delivering. Now, I planted one plant and then it just kept growing bigger and bigger. So now I've split it. I've actually split it into about 8. I've got more behind me. So it is prolific. The only problem really is that I do have more rhubarb than one could ever eat. So it's not the most versatile vegetable to use, which is actually one of the reasons why I love the Jerusalem artichoke, because if you think about it like a potato, there's a lot of uses for a potato. So not the most versatile, but very easy, very beautiful, as you can see, and just year after year, it just keeps pumping out the rhubarb. And actually over winter, I still get heaps of rhubarb. So another good winter edible when there aren't a lot of winter edibles. So that's my top recommendations for perennial edibles. They are all super easy. They get very little attention from me, and they provide me and my family a lot of food. So win, win, win.